All right, let's start by getting rid of some people. If you are a vampire and you're immortal and you cannot be hurt, you cannot be damaged, you can't get old, get out of here. This is not the show for you. If you have regular parents and somehow you are bit, you're going to want to hang out here. For everybody else that is not immortal, that does have birthdays, that does get older, I think the conversation that I'm about to have is going to help you tremendously. If you feel any sort of guilt as your parents are getting older, this is going to help you. If you're worried about a family member or a loved one as they're getting older, I think this will help you, because this is a piece of subject matter that I'm super, super excited to talk about, because I am super, super not knowledgeable about it. We're going to talk about family caregivers. We're going to talk about how to have skillful, if you hang out with Matt Easton, you know I love the word skillful. We're going to talk about how to have skillful conversations with our parents, with our loved ones as they age, as they get older. And I'm not going to give you all the answers. I've got Kim Elliott with me. She is the founder of Gray Monster.
Yes.
She is probably she won't admit it, the single greatest repository of information, the single greatest mind in terms of being a family caregiver. And I don't want to make you upset. I don't want to get upset with the industry. I think the caregiving, the family caregiving thing, there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Sure.
I think a lot of it is complete garbage.
Yeah.
I'm hoping you and I can talk. You can give me all the answers. You can give them all the answers, and we can talk about how to be just more skillful as our parents get older, as our loved ones get older, tips that you can give, communicating with our siblings. I mean, Kim, it's a freaking mess.
It is indeed. And I think it's a space that's in dire need of a rebrand, quite frankly.
And you're doing that with Gray Monster. Can you tell them about Gray? I've stumbled upon Gray Monster. It's fantastic. It's amazing. Walk us through Gray Monster and how this all started, and then get us tuned up.
Sure, I'm happy to. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to talk about my favorite topic. So thanks for inviting me on. Gray Monster is a free weekly newsletter delivered Sunday mornings to inboxes globally now. I've got some people over in Europe that are also subscribing.
How do they, because I got on that because, and I don't want to start crying on this, but I got some anxiety with my mom. She's 80. As you and I talked about before taping, she broke her freaking foot like a year ago, and didn't seem like it was a big deal. It was a big deal. I found Gray Monster. I got some really good laughs, right?
Yeah,
and I started to notice that, like, there's other people out there that, how do everybody out there, our friends out there, how do they find Gray Monster?
It's graymonster.co, and it's gray with an A. Or you can find us on Instagram, which is where we have a very active and vibrant community as well. I think the handle on that's Hey Gray Monster.
Hey Gray Monster, and graymonster.co with it, gray with a
A.
Perfect. All right. Help us, Kim.
Yeah. So Gray Monster really came from, or was born from my own experience in family caregiving. And, I've had a couple phases of it. The first was really kind of watching my own parents care for my dad's mom, my grandmother, who I was very close to. And she was really my first experience with dementia. She was living with dementia until she passed away. And towards the end of her life, she had in-home care. But there's one thing that I want to talk a little bit about is, even though there may be additional care support, right? Either paid in-home care, or perhaps there's assisted living, nursing home, memory care. There's certainly levels to it. That still makes you a caregiver. If you're the one that's picking up the phone, if you're the one who's, dropping clothes off, if you're helping support medications, if you're taking, your mom or dad to an appointment, that still makes you a caregiver. And I think, as a society, we don't do enough to kind of talk about that, like, that's still an act of giving care. So that's really where I started, right? Was watching my parents care for my grandmother And at the same time, my dad's sister, my aunt, her only daughter, was living with brain cancer and subsequently passed away shortly before my grandmother did. And, just the dynamic of watching her adult children care for her. I mean, it was, I was in my early 20s and it was a really powerful experience. And it was something I thought about for a very long time. These were two women that were very, important in my life and that I was very close to. And then fast forward, I had two other caregiving experiences that really started to shape Gray Monster. And at the time, I didn't realize they were shaping Gray Monster. The first, I was caring for my former father-in-law, and he was more of what's kind of traditionally known as caregiver creep, right? You start accompanying to doctor's appointments. You're bringing groceries.
Can I get a ride?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't want to drive on the highway.
Yeah.
It's kind of slow and it starts happening, and then all of a sudden you're making extra meals.
Can you pick me up and we'll go to things?
Sure.
Yeah.
And you're doing all of those things, and that's considered caregiver creep. And really the kind of ending of his life really coincided very closely and overlapped, quite frankly, with the caregiving experience I had for my own mother, who, very long story short, was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of cancer. Spoiler alert, she's still alive, but required an air ambulance out of state. It required a stem cell transplant. I was actually her donor. And then I was her caregiver, her primary caregiver, while she was recovering from her stem cell transplant. And the intensity of that experience stayed with me because I was, like most people, caregiving doesn't really happen at a good time. It's not like you're sitting around and
you're a high-powered executive in another life. You're doing stuff, and now you gotta all of a sudden book an air ambulance. And by the way, and my story is nothing like yours. And I know you're probably the type of person that would downplay it. Even my mom, that was incapacitated with a broken foot. Kim, I'm not kidding you. We thought maybe she had to get somebody to come to the house.
Yeah.
9 hours on the phone, calling. What are my options? There's no place to go. Or maybe I'm an idiot. I didn't have a roadmap.
It's disjointed for sure.
It was terrible. Like I would call and I wouldn't get a call back, and then somebody else would call me back, and the next thing you know, it's $400 an hour, and it's
if you don't have the information, if you don't have a medical power of attorney, if you don't have a financial power of attorney, if you don't have any of these like key documents in place, like oftentimes people won't even talk to you. They're not really interested in having a conversation with you, and understandably so, right? I think as individuals, we all deserve, respect and autonomy, but it makes the caregiving experience really difficult when you're thrust into it and you don't have any of the support systems in place.
I'm thinking there's a lot of people that are like me, and maybe not, but I come from that kind of old school, and this is horrible. I'm trying to not do this with my kids, but I come from that old school type of family unit where it was like, you never talk about money, you never talk about medical, you never talk about, and it's like, then I'm suddenly in just a mild version of it thrust into this when my mom, and I don't know. I don't know if she's allergic to medications. I don't know what insurance she has. I don't know anything. And meanwhile, she's this, Boston tough, and I've got this. It literally started as, can you just give me a ride home from my surgery?
Yeah. Always downplayed.
Yeah.
But you have to think, the boomer generation, they were raised by the silent generation.
Be tough.
Right? Yeah. And so that's sort of like, don't ask, don't tell. Like, there wasn't a lot of conversation to be had. And so you really can't fault them, because it's just like you and I. It was so much part of their upbringing as what our conversations look like now are part of ours.
How do we break through that?
So I'm glad you asked. Gray Monster and kind of the belief behind it is really about conversation before crisis. And it's a really easy thing to say. It's a really difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to think about, gosh, I'm gonna fall one day, and what does that experience look like? Or I'm gonna go to a doctor's appointment one day and I may never go home again. I may be admitted to a hospital, which was the case with my mother. Like, it's not a fun topic to discuss. I think societally speaking, we don't do a great job of talking about aging. I mean, to your point about vampires, kind of at the beginning of this, we make it sound really scary, and that's really kind of part of the name of Gray Monster is, and one, it's a bit of a double entendre. It's, if I'm going to be honest, it's poking a bit of fun at the name Silver Tsunami. I don't like that name. I don't find it helpful.
Where does that come
from? So its origins, I think of some marketing person to really talk about how many boomers are, turning 65 every day. We're facing this societal shift. By the year, I think 2030, we'll have more people over 65 than we will under the age of 18 for the first time in America's history. Now, granted, America's not that old, but that's meaningful. That's a meaningful statistic. And so the name Gray Monster, that's sort of the first meaning of it. And the second is really what it's rooted in, which is I think there's a lot of ambiguity, a lot of like gray area, if you will, when our parents start to age and to get a little bit older. And I think it can be scary. And it's scary for the same reason, but I think we're coming at it from two different sides, right? Like, my parents are worried that I'm going to take away their freedom and they're going to lose agency. And I'm scared that I'm also going to lose my freedom, but only because they didn't better plan or they didn't tell me their plans, and they may have plans. And so really that's kind of where the monster name comes into play.
I think that joke, like that running kind of joke, well, we're going to put you in a home. I think quietly that makes everybody freak out.
Wouldn't it? I mean, does
like,
that
I
scare
hate
you?
the idea of
hate the
even
idea
talking about
For
anything,
sure.
because then I feel tremendous guilt.
Yes.
And then and I'm sure the person that they are caring for feels tremendous guilt.
Absolutely.
But we can't just keep sweeping this under the rug.
You can't. And I'm glad you bring that up. So I brought a book for you today, a gift. And this is really where I think if I were to give a caregiver any piece of advice, I would suggest reading, which is not a book on caregiving at all, really. It's written by a psychologist, and I believe he won the Nobel Prize in economics as well. And it's called Thinking Fast and Slow. And it really talks about the two systems of thinking, right?
Okay.
The first system of thinking is sort of the quick, on your feet, very emotional. And the second system of thinking is really more slow, methodical. If you're thinking about it from a caregiving standpoint, if you're the older parent or the aging parent, you're thinking about like, oh, I should probably share my passwords and my medicine allergies with my kids. And if you're the adult child, you're thinking,
I ask for those things.
I should ask for them. I got to build a spreadsheet, right? But then system one comes in and we start to go down the path of system two, but then we both are flooded with system one, which is we become reactive. We start, the emotions of those conversations kind of come into play. And I think what caregivers could benefit from, and you're not going to read this in a day. It's not a short read. I think it's like 600 pages. And even if you just listen to like the cliff notes of it somewhere online, I think what's super interesting about it is, Gray Monster kind of lives in that friction point, right? And I think understanding where the other person is coming from is going to be super helpful when having these conversations. There's also there's a number of different topics in this book, but one of them specifically is around kind of framing and how that impacts our decision making. And an example of framing would be, let's say you're given a diagnosis and I have a 90% survival rate, or you hear a 10% death rate. Well, you're much more likely to make decisions based off of hearing a 90% survival rate, and you perceive the 10% death rate more negatively, even though it's the same thing.
Just the way you
But it's the way you
words.
frame it, and that's the way you pivot the words. And I think when we're talking about such a sensitive subject and such a deeply personal topic, I think we've got to understand where these thoughts are coming from.
So we've got the holidays coming up,
Yeah,
right?
we do.
People are
'Tis the
flying out.
season,
They're flying.
yes.
You're either going to mom's house or dad's house, or dad or mom is coming to you. Yeah. What can the folks out there, what answers can you give them in terms of, one, how do they skillfully start this conversation with mom or dad or uncle or whoever it is, right?
Yeah.
And then can you give us some actionable takeaways of like, we're not going to solve the whole issue right here, but like, what do I need? You mentioned a spreadsheet. What are some of the things that, like, let's say I'm going to sit down with a parent, you know, they're getting older, everything's great, but I don't want to have this conversation in the middle of an emergency. I want to have this conversation right now. How do I start that conversation? What do I ask for? And how do I make them feel like they still have their dignity, right?
Absolutely.
Like,
That's
and don't
hugely
feel
important.
like I'm
Yes.
treating them like
Yes.
some sort of appliance or a car that's out of warranty. And, you know, like how does somebody have that conversation, and what do we take away from it?
Yeah, great questions. I think you start now. You start before you go home, because what's going to happen is you're going to get on an airplane and you're going to, you know, get to the airport. When you land, you're going to get in your
With
rental
all the
car.
intentions of doing it.
Sure, but you're going to see your mom, and
Yeah.
you're going to think, and maybe it's been 6 months since you've seen your mom. Maybe it's been a year. Maybe it's been since last Thanksgiving that you saw your mom. And it's going to feel like a shock to the system in most cases. Now, I don't know everybody's mom. I don't know every case, but oftentimes it feels like a shock to the system because you haven't seen this person in a while.
They're different.
And they're different, right? And so what you shouldn't do is wait till you get home. And a good example of this, and this is a real life example, I am going home. I grew up in California, and I'm going to see my dad. And I gave him a heads up, and I called my dad and I said, "Hey, listen, I'm curious to get your take on, you know, a couple of different things related to basically my dad's choices in aging and what's important to him, and making sure that I understand them." And he and I spoke about this. You know, we probably talk about it once every. Well, now we talk about it a lot more. But you know, there was a period of a few years where we talk about it once every 6 months, right? Mm-hmm. Because I believe in strong opinions loosely held. Like what you may want or what your mom may want today might be different in a year.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things that I learned from my caregiving experience was like releasing the outcome. Like, as much as we want to control things, especially if you're, you know, a doer and a go-getter and you're used to achieving.
It's hard to admit that maybe that's not what you want anymore.
And you have to decide too, what's more important? Is you being right more important than your mom having agency as she ages? Like, I think that you have a decision to make, and I think most people have a decision to make. And I'll be the first to admit there are decisions that my own parents make that, like, if it were up to me, I might make them different. But I also respect them as humans. I respect the fact that they, you know, raised me and cared for me growing up, and they're fully entitled to live their life how they want. Now, I will caveat or asterisk that by saying, if there's a place in their aging experience for me or my sister or someone else to care for them, it's very helpful if you just let me know. Because what will happen is there's going to likely be a situation, I mean, not in every scenario, but it's likely that there will be a situation where there has to be decisions that are made, and they have to be made quickly, right? In the system one way of thinking. And what would be best for both parties is if they've already told me what they would want to have happen in said situation, and then all I have to do is action on that. Mm-hmm. Because what I don't want to
You're
have...
not trying to guess what their wishes are.
Exactly. Would mom, you know, because that, to your point around sibling discourse, that brings up, well, mom told me this. Oh, well, dad told me this.
Yeah.
Well, I think they would want that. And so it just alleviates all of that friction.
All right. So step one,
You
I'm going to
start
give,
now.
before we go out, we're going to give our parent, our loved one, a heads up that we're going to talk about this.
Yeah,
But,
and frame it in a way of like, I want to know what's important
yeah,
to
I
you.
love how the sales coach in me loves how you framed, hey, I'm curious.
Yes.
Huge difference between saying, I need to know.
Exactly.
I think if we start these conversations with mom, I need to know what you're this and that. I need your passwords. Now it starts to feel
Well,
like
would you
we're
want to give yours
attacked.
out? I mean,
Okay,
if somebody
yeah.
came to me that way,
Right. But I
Absolutely not.
think when we're emotional,
Sure.
especially with our parent, like we have some of the worst dialogue ever between family members, right?
sure.
Like we beat the crap out of each other, right? Because we've been talking our whole lives with
It's
these
sort
people.
of like my girlfriend and I always joke, like I can speak back, I can talk a little smack about my own sister, but like if anyone else were
Right,
to,
that was how it was my
like,
brother. Boom, he's
absolutely
yes.
not.
Okay.
Like I will go to the mat.
Okay, so I'm gonna let my parent know, hey, I'm just curious to get your take on this stuff. So now I'm getting step one, I'm gonna get them prepared for this conversation. Okay.
Yes.
Step number two, we're gonna have the conversation. What are some of the highlights that I need to ask a parent to get prepared because it's not a matter if,
Sure.
when
Sure.
things get
Yeah.
to where more support will be needed. What the heck should I ask? I don't even know what to ask.
Yeah, I think you're first asking questions. You're not going to get all of the answers on one trip. That would be so emotionally overwhelming.
Yeah,
And
what are
trust
some of
me,
just the key
I
pillars that I need?
So I think you got to set up the legal stuff,
Okay,
right?
what is the legal stuff?
And it's really,
Is it
and again,
living
I'm not
trust?
an attorney,
Yeah, okay.
but it's a power of attorney, right?
Okay,
You're gonna
power of
want
attorney.
Power of attorney for medical and financial.
And that document is going to allow, now those people have to talk to me because I have that
Well,
document
they're
in
going to
place.
ask for it, right?
Okay.
Should your mom break her leg again or something else happen? And
If
she
I
goes to the
have that
hospital,
document, I can act
or
on it,
she,
okay?
exactly.
Okay. Power of attorney, we're getting that in
That's
place.
going to be super important.
And then if mom says your brother or your sister or whoever, if I want them to be it, then at least you know.
Sure, and oftentimes there's alternates, right? And
Uh-huh.
so, like, let's say your brother's traveling, or for some reason he can't do it. You might be listed as number 2.
Okay.
Great. Your
All right.
wife might be the person that she feels closest to and doesn't want you or your brother and prefers you. Like whatever.
We're
that
gonna
makeup,
have this
you're gonna
conversation
know-
before we need it.
Exactly,
Okay.
and you're going to hopefully get the document
Good.
pulled together. And so,
So we got power of attorney.
yes,
They can research that and figure that out. But what else do we need from this conversation?
and I think part of it in that whole like legal realm is you're having conversations around, and again, not a fun conversation, especially around the holidays to have, but it's really about like what are their, medical wishes. This was an experience that I had with one of the folks I was caring for, one of my loved ones who didn't want to be artificially kept alive, right?
How do you gracefully open the door to?
Well, I'm sure
subjects
there's
like that?
people that can do it more gracefully than I am, and I was lucky. He had been a physician, and so this was a
He was
conversation
aware.
that like he was aware of, and I think it was his professional experience that sort of drove him to the beliefs that he had and the thoughts. But it alleviated a lot of friction because he had already decided what he had wanted.
So power of attorney, and then just in a general sense, I need to kind of know what their wishes are.
Sure.
What do
yes.
they want to happen?
And there's great resources online that I'm happy to send you that are free resources to point your viewers and your listeners to kind of help have those conversations, kind of like starting guides.
I'll put a link if you can send
Yeah,
something.
and then
I can
Grey
put a link
Monster
here.
did. So Grey Monster keeps kind of a team of experts, right? Where it may be a family therapist or a team of them, geriatricians, elder law attorneys, financial experts that like when we are putting together these checklists or these sort of conversation guides, it's not like randomly I'm like, oh, we should just ask this. We're sort of drafting them in partnership with the experts and really distilling them into more conversational type tone so it doesn't feel super formal. I'll share those links with you after.
So I'm gonna skillfully, just curious, want to, have this. I'm gonna prepare them for that conversation so they're not feeling blindsided, right? We're gonna maybe
Get some
sit
legal
down,
documents and
have a glass of wine, chill. We're gonna talk about this. I'm gonna get the power of attorney in place.
Yeah.
I'm gonna generally know their wishes.
Yeah.
You had mentioned a spreadsheet. Can you give some highlights of that kind of stuff that we start while we've got time on this stuff? We got some time.
We have a little time
If
for
I was going to start a spreadsheet, Okay, I would probably put, I love my mom. I love my mom and every,
course.
like, I don't know. My brother will handle it. What the heck is on this spreadsheet, this magical
Yeah,
spreadsheet?
so really, luckily for caregivers now, there's a ton of tools that exist. Of course, there's fees associated with them, but they're not too bad. That really minimize the need for my spreadsheet that
Okay.
I had built. And I'm happy to.
What were some of the things that were on your
But really,
spreadsheet?
what you're looking to capture is as much information as they want to give you around kind of everything, right? Part of caregiving for a parent, which is different than caring for a child, is that like you don't have the institutional knowledge that like caring for a child you may have as their parent, right? And so this is kind of a learning expedition for you. And so you got to know where they bank. You've got to know, I mean, if they're willing to share their passwords with you, if they're willing to share, hey, if they have a financial planner, you need to know who their physicians are. You need to know what medications they're taking, right? You need to have a good understanding of, is there a note on their home? Do they have a note on their car? Who their insurance provider is? Like all of the information any adult has and needs, like you'll need for your parent, because I will assure you every bit of it will come into play at some point
Yeah.
as you're caring for them.
All right, so we've got a little bit of how to start it if you haven't started, because I think a lot of people are like
Yeah.
me. What advice can you give for the folks that are knee deep in this or
Yeah.
neck deep in this?
Yeah.
They're working a job, or they were supposed to be a mom to take care of kids, and the next thing they know, they're drowning.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm going to have my
Very
normal
real.
life, and then I'm constantly on my lunch break going back and forth. What can you say to that
Yeah.
group, folks that are actively caring for somebody right now?
Yeah,
I
which
feel like
by
they're
the way,
not heard.
there's 56 million unpaid family caregivers in the U.S. caring for an older adult. And if you were
Let's
to
pause
pay,
at that number. I need that number to
there's
sink in.
40 million people in
Yeah.
America.
So that means
Yeah.
1 in 6-ish
yeah.
people have a full-time job caring for a loved one, or worse. And the worst is they still have to pay their own bills.
Sure, they are.
They still
Most people
have
are.
their regular
Yes,
job.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
they're working a full-time job of caring for somebody. And I bet if they got paid the same hourly rate in their caregiving, they would have probably made a lot more money. Like the hours they're putting in every other hour other than showering, feeding themselves, and sleeping. There's a lot of those people.
So these numbers come from an AARP report that was published this past July, and the number is, from what I understand from other folks that I've spoken to in the industry, is a little low. But they estimate if you were to pay every unpaid family caregiver in the U.S. what would be a normal rate for the work that they're doing, they estimate that to be around $600 billion annually. Some say it's as high as $1 trillion. Because again, I think a lot of people don't identify as a family caregiver because, to your exact point, there's just not a ton of support. We don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's this really shadowy part of life that's really strange because it impacts nearly all of us.
Yeah, and it's one of these things I feel like if you have multiple siblings, there's always that one.
One, yes. And they're
Sounds
typically,
like yourself
they say
included,
the eldest
where it's like
daughter,
everybody
I mean,
steps back. It's one. We're looking for a volunteer, and all the kids
All of a
take one
sudden you're
step
looking
back, and
around,
you're like,
yeah.
I guess it's me. And they just keep getting hit with, you got to take care of grandma. Help mom. Can you help that? Because you're skillful on this. And like my wife's mom was that figure in her family. Anytime somebody was ill, anytime it's fly her out, and she'll come in and help. And
she probably did.
but she did, but she had no resources, no community, no.
And no one's asking the caregiver, how you doing? Are you
Right.
tired? How are
Right.
you feeling?
You might get a thank you, but
Sure.
yeah, but the endless calls with the insurance company, the this, the that, putting handles on toilets and all that stuff. Nobody notices.
Yeah. So I will say, if I could give anybody who's in it, and this is probably my biggest regret around my own caregiving experience, is that I didn't ask for help at all, and certainly not early on. And I should have been very prescriptive in the type of help that I needed and that I could benefit from. And
so you were like the inverse, where like my mom's like, I got it, I'm fine. You were also like, I got it, I'm
because
fine.
I think that's a natural place to be. And it's not to speak negatively about any other family members, or like in the experience that I had particularly with my mom. She was getting a brand new immune system during a global pandemic. We couldn't bring in help if we wanted to. My sister couldn't fly out. They wouldn't allow it, right? It was just too big of a risk to have any sort of outside help come in. I mean, the only time I was allowed to leave the house was to take my mom back to the transplant clinic, which we were going at initially, every other day sometimes you were there for 2 hours, sometimes you were there for 6 hours, depending on if,
And you had a job through this, you had a career
I had a
through?
full-time job. And, I think there's something you're probably familiar with, but breadwinners don't get breaks. I was the breadwinner in my family. And, you can't hit the pause button on your life when you have
You're running home, grabbing a
and
shower because it's like 4 hours of sleep, and now you're on your conference call for work.
Totally.
And they don't.
Right, because on a Teams
They're
call
not
or a
gonna be-
Zoom, it's not a good time to be like, hey, do you guys...
I don't think it's good to even unload that. I mean, at some point you got to maybe mention it, but I'm sorry, work, you have an obligation there too.
You do have an obligation. I will say, I think we're going to start, and I'm starting to see this, certainly in larger corporations, especially with the return to office mandate, we're starting to see companies, and we're right on open enrollment, right? That's like right around the corner for everybody. But organizations are starting to recognize that this is a crisis in America, right?
Yeah.
It is a care crisis. There have been documentaries on it. And the burnout is so high that they recognize they will start to lose really good employees if they don't offer support. And
well, think about like every company has something set up, or has at least thought about setting something up for maternity leave, right?
Yes.
We're now entering a place where there's going to be more people entering into aging, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, because we have this, the gray monster, I like that sound of that better than the silver tsunami, but there's going to be more adults that need help than there are babies that are born. It does not matter if this is a 1 week old individual or a 93-year-old individual. They both require us to help them.
I want to pause you on something you just said. You said a 93-year-old individual, which I love, because I think part of the issue is that we talk about aging in such a negative, kind of miserable sounding way. And I think about my own family and my own parents and my own friends' parents, and they're kind of like, there's a lot of them that are doing really well, and they'll come to me, or I'll get calls or texts from some of my friends' parents about like, hey, I want to be able to talk to my child, but I'm doing so well that they don't want to have the conversation, right? Because
and
they don't want to think about,
them.
and I don't want to burden them. And so it's really kind of like bridging that gap. But I don't think that like stairs in a home are bad for everyone, right? If you're used to stairs and it can be a form of exercise. I don't think that, the second we turn a certain age, we've got to pull the driver's license. Like, again, I think that there needs to just be conversations about these.
Should they start that conversation the same way that we would say, hey, I'm curious to get your take. And then when your kids come, hey, I got these stairs, I'm great with them, but...
Because for all you know, and I just had this conversation with one of my girlfriend's moms, who's wildly active. She travels all the time, and she's just really, really amazing in so many ways. But she was talking about like, do I want a huge house forever? Mm-hmm. And, she's starting to have those conversations. And what does she want in her surroundings, in her physical surroundings as she gets older, and what that might look like? And women, I think the statistic, typically live longer than men. And so as a lot of women need to be thinking about that, and what do they want their environment to look like? And it's okay to talk about it, right? It's okay to talk about it and then revisit the conversation with, your mom or an adult child 6 months down the road, a year down the road, and say, hey, it's different now. These things happened over this last year, and this is how I'm feeling about that particular topic right now. And again, I just think easing that friction and getting comfortable talking about it helps everyone.
All right. So, step number 1, find Gray Monster, become a part of the group.
Subscribe. It's free. We don't send, again, I send one email. It's every Sunday morning, probably a 5-10 minute read.
Step number 2, and I think this is probably the biggest of all, prepare the person, no blindsiding.
No.
Hey, I'm curious to get your opinion on something. I'm curious what your thoughts on this. Whether you are the adult parent, the person aging, or the child, right? And then step number 3, let's get some basic stuff in place. Here's my wishes. Here's a power of attorney. Here's what I think I want to do with the steps. What are all your thoughts? Let's at least start having these conversations because it's undefeated. Aging is
nobody gets out of this life alive.
We're not getting out of it alive. This is probably one of the single best investments I think that we can make is having these conversations with our loved ones. Kim has tremendous resources at Gray Monster to help you with that. At the very least, you're going to know, hey, I'm not alone. There's other people. Kim, I really appreciate having you on here.
Thanks for having me.
What do you want to say to them as you're their new best friend in caregiving and all things?
I would just really, if you're in it, if you're a caregiver, just know that there's a lot of you out there. There's support. I think it's okay to laugh. It can be a really serious, heavy feeling. It can be very isolating. And I think it's okay to have a little levity, which is what Gray Monster does, our taglines for people with parents.
It's kind of hilarious. There's some hilarious stuff.
There is. There are, and there's a lot of love in it. I've never met a single family caregiver who isn't doing what they're doing, although we may not get it right, and I certainly didn't get it right all the time, but that it's not rooted deeply in love, right? There's a lot of love in family caregiving, and there's a lot of us doing it. And I think by normalizing this conversation and by having people like you that are these experts in other spaces talk to other people really kind of helps socialize this
we
part
gotta
of
get
life
the conversation started.
that exists.
We got to get it started. Kim, it has been awesome having you on the show. I know that you are going to help a ton of people, and keep doing what you're doing. Don't stop. You're amazing. Your story is amazing. They're going to learn a lot more about you as they hang out on Gray Monster, and it has been great. And I'm going to go call my mom. I'm going to let her know I'm curious about a few things. And
Let me know
we're
how
on
it
that.
goes.
Yeah, I will let you know how it goes. Thank you for giving us all the answers, Kim, on caregiving, on taking care of our loved ones. You are great. You are powerful. You are amazing. Thank you for being here. Guys, Gray Monster, check it out. Probably the best conversation you can have in your year this year. Most important conversation is at least opening the door to the subject of our family members, our loved ones, as they get older. Thanks, everybody, for being here.